know the coat that they're singing about, don't we? Know that the theme of today is Joseph. And as we read Joseph's story, we do read that Joseph receives a coat from his father. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Last week, Reverend Trista shared with us the story of Abraham. And if you remember, the Bible tells us that Abraham descended from Noah, Noah descended from Seth, and Seth descended from Adam. Now, there are several generations that appear between these gentlemen. But now, today, our narrative slows down a little bit. The Bible tells us that Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob, and Jacob was the father of Joseph, who we're talking about today. However, in order for us to really understand Joseph's story, we have to know a little bit about Jacob, his father. You see, Jacob had 11 other sons besides Joseph. And these 12 sons, they would eventually become the 12 tribes of Israel, but not until there are many struggles that they go through. And Joseph is part of those struggles. You see, Jacob, as was the tradition of the time, had more than one wife. Going to set up some interesting family dynamics right there, isn't it? But he also made it very clear, not only to the other wives, but to his entire family, that his favorite wife was Rachel. He loved Rachel more than any other wives. And as he loved Rachel, he also loved their offspring. Their first offspring was Joseph. Joseph was very clearly Jacob's favorite son. Okay. More family dynamics in play. They're then a little concerning. Most of our psychiatrists today would say it's not a good idea to overtly favor one child over another in a family. There are going to be some difficulties if that occurs. Well, Jacob didn't have the benefit of our modern psychology. So that's what played out, and that's where we begin reading today in the book of Genesis, chapter 37. This is the story of the family of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was shepherding the flock with his brothers. He was the helper to the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now Israel, meaning Jacob, loved Joseph more than any other of his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he had made him a long robe with sleeves. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Once Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream that I dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright. Then your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to have dominion over us?" So they hated him even more because of his dreams and his words. This is the word of God for the people of God, and we say, thanks be to God. Well, Joseph's coat, or his long robe, is traditionally translated in Hebrew as a coat of many colors. We see that the coat is a very explicit sign of Jacob's favoritism to Joseph. And as I read this part of Joseph's story, I immediately paused, because I thought, what is Joseph thinking? Why would he tell his brothers this dream when it's so clear what the meaning of this dream is? And not only does he tell them this dream, he goes on to tell them another dream, a dream in which the sun and the moon and 11 stars bow down to him. Again, not a wise choice. I just kept thinking, Joseph, please stop, put the filter in, don't let it come out of your mouth. But then I remember, he's 17 years old. We all made some bad choices when we were 17, didn't we? I know I did. I would speak always not thinking how my words are going to be received by someone else. I was impulsive. I was full of my own dreams. I was full of what I imagined would be my life and the successes that I would experience. And I just didn't always think about what I was doing and how it would affect others. I had dreams. Joseph had dreams. Okay, so now we look at Joseph's life. I'm going to do something that I've never done before. I'm going to try to take us through 13 chapters of the Bible in a very short period of time. Chapters 37 through 50. And it's really kind of easy to do on one hand because it's Joseph's life story. So you ready? You're supposed to say yes. Okay, here we go. All right, so Joseph, we know, is not liked by his brothers. But his father Jacob sends him off into the field to check up on his brothers who are supposed to be tending the flocks. They're shepherds. So he goes out, but he goes out in his beautiful coat. The brothers see him from a distance coming toward them, and they start to devise a plan of how they can get rid of him. They hate this brother. In fact, they even talk about killing him. Well, Reuben, the oldest of the brothers, said, well, okay, let's not kill him, but let's at least teach him a really good lesson. Let's take his coat, and we'll throw him then in this empty well. So all the brothers agree on this. Joseph comes, they take his coat, they throw him in the well. Then Reuben leaves the scene for a time period. We assume to go shepherd the flocks, and the other brothers are left alone once again. And they really start thinking and planning and plotting, and they say, we've got to get rid of this young upstart. He is such a pain. And they notice a caravan traveling by, and they get the idea, let's sell Joseph as a slave to these traders. And that's exactly what they do. When Reuben returns from the fields, he sees that Joseph is not at the well, and he says, what have you done, brothers? And they tell him. And he says, okay, we've got to figure out something that we can do so that we can explain to our father Joseph's disappearance. So they take the coat, they dip it in goat's blood, they take it back to their father Jacob, and they say, well, Joseph was killed by a wild animal while he was out in the fields. Wow, that's some sibling rivalry. Okay, so Jacob is devastated. In the meantime, what happens to Joseph? Yes, he's taken by these traders, but he's taken into Egypt. And in Egypt, he is sold to a man named Potiphar. Potiphar is one of the Pharaoh's very highest officials. And Potiphar has many, many servants that are working for him. But he notices that Joseph has a little something extra, something special. So as Joseph continues to work and be a slave in his household, Joseph's entire household, quite a difference from where he was, from the pit to now this place of authority. He's noticed, but not only by Mr. Potiphar, he's noticed by Mrs. Potiphar. I heard the giggle. Yes, Mrs. Potiphar says, oh my, this is a young, handsome, capable young man. And so she tries to allure him and draw him into an adulterous relationship. Joseph rejects her advances. And as we do sometimes, we sometimes take our anger out on the person we shouldn't. That's what she does. She goes to Mr. Potiphar and she says, hey, Joseph was being forward with me. He was trying to involve me in an illicit relationship. And so Mr. Potiphar, as you would imagine, he becomes angry and irate, and he throws Joseph into prison. Wow, this guy is having a roller coaster life. While he is in prison, however, the chief jailer sees something in him. And so as he experiences his time in prison, he rises through the ranks again, and he becomes the overseer of all the other prisoners. he's noticed by two prisoners in particular. Two prisoners that had worked for the Pharaoh. They displeased the Pharaoh, and now they have been placed in prison. And they have, each of them have dreams that they can explain. And so they come to Joseph, and they say, can you explain these dreams? And Joseph says, can't God interpret dreams? And so that's what he does. He interprets these dreams correctly, and he's made such an impression on one of the jailers, or one of those officers that has been jailed, that when that individual is allowed to go back into the Pharaoh's service, he is able to give Pharaoh a positive report about Joseph. Okay, you still with me? I know this is a long journey. So, the Pharaoh has a dream. He has two dreams, actually, and he can't explain them. The magicians can't explain these dreams. No one in Pharaoh's service can explain these dreams, but this one officer who has been in jail with Joseph, he says to the Pharaoh, you know, there was a young man that I was in jail with, and he interpreted my dreams correctly. Pharaoh, bring him forward, bring him from jail. Perhaps he will be able to interpret your dream as well. And so that's what the Pharaoh does. The Pharaoh brings Joseph to him. He tells Joseph his dreams. This is what Joseph tells the Pharaoh. Pharaoh, your dreams mean this. For 7 years, Egypt will experience time of plenty. The harvests will be overflowing. But that will then be followed by 7 years of famine. But Joseph doesn't end there. He doesn't just offer an interpretation of the dreams. He offers Pharaoh a solution. He says, Pharaoh, I think it'd be a good idea if you assign an overseer to take charge of all of the land owners to make sure that during this time of plenty, these 7 years, that they withhold enough grain, enough food, that will take us through those 7 years of famine. Well, guess who becomes the overseer? Yes, Joseph. Joseph becomes the overseer. Again, this roller coaster ride experience that he is having in his life. Okay, now we go back to Jacob. Jacob is in the land of Canaan with his sons and their families, and they are experiencing a famine. They hear that Egypt has food. So he sends his sons to the Pharaoh to purchase food so that their families may live. The brothers come before Pharaoh. They come into Pharaoh's court, but they come before Joseph. Joseph recognizes them immediately, but he has changed so much. He was just a boy of 17 when they last saw him, but he recognizes them immediately. He recognizes them also because here he sees them bowing down before him, just as his dream indicated so many years ago, that they would bow down before him. Chapters 42 through 50 are very interesting. I would invite you to read those for yourselves. You'll see that there are a series of meetings and conversations that Joseph and his brothers go back and forth and back and forth. During this time, Joseph comes to understand that his brothers regret what they have done. They have repented for what they have done, although they do not yet know that this is their brother that they have been speaking with all these many days and weeks. Finally, Joseph reveals his identity to his brothers. It's in this that we read in chapter 50. Joseph wept when they spoke to him. Then his brothers also wept. They fell down before him and said, "We are here as your slaves." But Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? Even though you intended to do harm to me, God intended it for good." Forgiveness. Perhaps The greatest experience that Joseph has had up to this point in time is a heart that is able to forgive his brothers. All of the trials, all of the tribulations that he's experienced, he comes to understand he was not alone, that somehow God had purpose, and he could offer forgiveness to his brothers. Life is just full of unexpected detours, isn't it? As we live our lives, we have great joy. The birth of a child, of grandchildren, joy and graduations and weddings. But we also know that there can be pain. We see loved ones who struggle with health issues. We have health issues ourselves. We struggle with money. Is there ever enough? Sometimes we struggle when there's too much. We just struggle. We are people who struggle. But through it all, we know that God is faithful. God goes with us.
Yes.
I think it's really telling when you look at chapter 37, what we first read, that Joseph doesn't acknowledge God. But then as he matures, as he grows, as he experiences life, even his trials, we see that he begins to acknowledge God. When he encounters Potiphar's wife, when he encounters the chief jailer, when he encounters the Pharaoh, when he encounters his brothers, he always acknowledges God. God has been working. God is faithful. God cares for me, but God also cares for you. Adam, Seth, Noah, Abraham, Jacob, Joseph. God was present and working. God is present and working with us today. Let's pray.